The grand chandelier glowed like a frozen sun, dripping crystal tears onto the ballroom floor. It was the annual Kane Foundation Gala, held in the heart of Manhattan's elite. Billionaire philanthropist Richard Kane stood near the bar, his crisp tuxedo tailored to perfection, his presence commanding attention, but his eyes were empty. 5 years had passed since that accident. 5 years since Elena, his beloved wife, vanished during a private jet crash en route to Zurich. They never found her body. Just wreckage. Ash. Silence. And yet, Richard never held a funeral. He never accepted it. Not fully. He sipped his scotch and turned to leave the crowd when a small voice stopped him cold. "Mr. Kane." He turned. The voice didn't belong to a staff member or a socialite's child. It belonged to a little black girl, no older than 10, dressed in a second-hand purple hoodie and sneakers far too worn for such a posh event. Security moved in, ready to escort her out. "Wait," Richard said sharply, holding up his hand. "Let her speak." She stepped closer, eyes wide and impossibly calm. "Your wife is still alive." The glass slipped from Richard's hand and shattered on the marble floor. Scene 2, the girl who wasn't supposed to be there. Within seconds, event security surrounded them, but Richard's focus never left the girl. "What did you say?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She didn't flinch. "I said your wife is still alive. I saw her. Yesterday." The entire room had quieted now. His billionaire friends looked on curiously, some with raised brows, others with veiled smirks. "Where?" he asked. "Where did you see her?" "In District 12. She gave me a blanket. And she had a necklace with your initials on it. RK. I saw her eyes. She cried when I told her my name." "What is your name?" "Hope." Something inside him twisted. The name. The message. The eyes. "Get me my car," he told his assistant. Scene 3, District 12. District 12 was the part of the city Richard's foundation often ignored, the slums, the forgotten buildings where hope literally went to die. Drugs. Cold. Abandonment. And now, apparently, a clue. Hope sat in the back seat as the black SUV tore through the night. She clutched a small satchel that jingled faintly. "You said she gave you a blanket?" Richard asked. Hope nodded, pulled it from the bag. It was tattered, hand-stitched. "I saw her near the old train station. She was helping a man who got beat up." Richard's hands gripped the wheel tighter. That's something Elena would do. Scene 4, the message in the blanket. They pulled up to the abandoned station near midnight. It was bitter cold. Hope led the way. They entered a makeshift shelter, cardboard walls, broken benches, but someone had tried to make it livable. A makeshift cot. Some canned goods. A broken mirror. Richard spotted the blanket again, another one. And tucked under it, something else. A red envelope. Inside, a note. Handwritten. The handwriting was unmistakable. I'm sorry. I don't know who to trust. If you found this, it means you followed Hope. She's the only one I could risk speaking to. They're watching me. Don't trust anyone close. Not even your board. I'm still alive. But I don't know for how long. Richard's knees buckled. She was alive. And someone didn't want him to know. Scene 5, unraveling the lie. Back in his penthouse, Richard tore through 5 years of files. Flight reports. Insurance claims. Financial records. He called in favors. Dug through his own company's encrypted archives. There was a second flight manifest. 5 names. 1 crossed out. Elena Kane. No official report. No public acknowledgement. He confronted the private aviation company CEO the next morning. The man denied everything, until Richard presented the note and threatened a federal audit. "We were paid to falsify the record," the man finally confessed. "By someone on your board." Scene 6. The deeper conspiracy. Hope stayed with Richard now, at his insistence. He arranged for her to be taken care of, enrolled in school, but she refused to leave his side. "She saved me," Hope said one night. "Now it's my turn." Through Hope's eyes, Richard saw something he hadn't in years: truth without motive. She didn't want money. Fame. Nothing but justice. They followed clues. Bank withdrawals from unknown aliases. Shelter donations in Elena's name. CCTV footage grainy but promising. And a final lead, a woman matching Elena's description seen at a church clinic near the edge of the city. Scene 7, the final hour of Act 1. Richard approached the clinic alone. No security. No fanfare. Just Hope at his side. A nurse hesitated, then nodded slowly. "We have someone who fits that description. She's mute. Trauma, we think. Comes in every Thursday to help the children. May I wait?" He sat in the hallway, heart pounding. Every second stretched like an hour. And then, she appeared. Same walk. Same eyes. A scar now cut across her jaw. But it was her. Elena. She stopped mid-step. The tray she was holding clattered to the ground. "Richard. You're alive," he choked. Hope reached for his hand. "Told you." Richard stood frozen in the hallway of the humble church-run clinic, blinking at the woman who haunted his dreams for the last 5 years. Elena. She didn't run. She didn't smile. She just stared, like she'd seen a ghost. Then, slowly, tears filled her eyes. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered. They embraced, trembling, shaking with the weight of all the years that had collapsed between them. "I thought you were gone," he said into her shoulder. "They wanted you to think that," she replied. "But I couldn't let them win." Hope stood nearby, watching silently. The child had been the bridge between the lie and the truth. And now, the truth was unraveling fast. Scene 2, a story in pieces. Later, in a quiet back room of the clinic, Elena sat with a steaming cup of tea. Her hands were still shaking. Richard never let go of her gaze. "Tell me everything," he said. She nodded slowly, beginning to speak like someone walking barefoot across shattered glass. "It started 3 months before the crash. I overheard something during a foundation meeting. A conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Your company. Richard, someone was laundering money through the Kane Foundation." "What?" "One of your board members. Maybe more. They were using shell companies under the guise of international aid. Millions, gone. Funneled. I had proof. Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to. I was gathering it all, emails, accounts, secret ledgers. But then." She looked down. "Then the plane went down." Scene 3, the sabotage. Richard's voice caught in his throat. "Are you saying, the crash wasn't an accident?" "No. It wasn't." Elena continued, voice trembling. "Right before takeoff, I was handed a different itinerary by a flight attendant I didn't recognize. It felt wrong. I trusted my gut and never got on. I hid behind the terminal doors, and then I saw the jet explode in the distance. Oh my God. I knew if I survived, they'd come after you next. So I ran. I erased myself. I've been moving ever since, using shelters, clinics, churches. And then I met her." She looked toward Hope. "She reminded me of who I used to be. Who I still was. Scene 4, The Assassin in the Hallway. Suddenly, a loud knock. 3 slow thuds on the back entrance. Richard and Elena locked eyes. She froze. "That's how they knocked," she whispered. 3 times. "Always." Richard motioned for Hope to stay behind and walked toward the door cautiously. "Who is it?" he called. No answer. He opened the door a crack, and a man lunged at him with a knife. Richard barely dodged, slamming the door shut and throwing a chair under the knob. Elena was already on her feet, pulling Hope back. "They found me," she whispered. "We're getting out of here," Richard said. Now. Scene 5, Trust No One. Back at Richard's private estate, one of several he owned under various shell companies, they regrouped. Richard called in Daniel Shaw, his lifelong friend, lawyer, and someone who had once sworn he would die before betraying him. "I don't know who I can trust," Richard confessed. "Then trust no one," Elena said. "Not until we know who's behind this." That night, Richard reviewed everything Elena had collected. Notes. Flash drives. Handwritten accounts. Hope, sitting nearby with a plate of cookies, quietly asked. "Why would they do all this? Just for money?" Elena replied softly, "Because power always hides behind money. And some people fear exposure more than death." Scene 6, The Hidden Recorder. The next morning, Hope was playing near the fireplace when she found something odd wedged behind the baseboard. A small black disc. A listening device. Richard's eyes narrowed. "They're already watching this place." He tossed it into the fire. For the first time, Elena smiled faintly. "You've changed," she said. "So have you." But outside the gates, in a black SUV parked across the street, someone was watching them, through a long-range lens. And whispering into a phone. "She's alive. And he knows." Scene 7, The Betrayal Within. Daniel Shaw returned with shocking intel. The laundering was real. The Foundation's offshore accounts were drained through a dummy NGO. Guess who set it up? Who? Jerome Callister. Richard's face turned to stone. Jerome Callister, his CFO. His friend of 20 years. The man who consoled him at the memorial. Who held his hand while he wept for a wife who wasn't dead. "He said you were unraveling after her death," Daniel continued. "That the Foundation needed stability. He quietly moved more power under his own name." "He's been bleeding my empire from the inside," Richard growled. "And now he knows the truth is alive." Scene 8, The Flame Reignites. That night, Richard and Elena sat alone in the garden, away from bugs and cameras and betrayal. "I tried to live without you," he whispered. "But I wasn't living. And I tried to stay away, to keep you safe. You are my safe." They kissed. Gently. Slowly. As if learning each other all over again. Hope watched from the window, smiling. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew what she saw was real. Love that survived fire, loss, lies, and the deepest kind of silence. Scene 9, The Decision. The next morning, Richard looked at Elena. "It ends now." "What do you mean?" "I'm going to expose him. Publicly. We'll go straight to the press. But first, I need one thing from you." "What?" He opened a drawer and pulled out the original wedding necklace, the one she wore in Hope's story. "Proof you're alive." Elena took the necklace. Her fingers trembled. She nodded. "Let's burn it all down." The lights were blinding. The room packed. Every major media outlet in the country had a seat. CNN. Reuters. BBC. Even gossip blogs. They all came to see Richard Kane. He walked on stage, flanked by his lawyer Daniel Shaw and a woman no one had seen in public in 5 years. Gasps echoed like thunder when they realized who she was. Elena Kane. Alive. Walking. Breathing. She looked thinner, yes, scarred and silent, but unmistakably herself. Richard stepped to the podium. For years, I've mourned the woman standing beside me. I was told she died in a tragic accident. I accepted that lie. I built my life around it. But the truth never stopped whispering. He paused. Let the silence settle. My wife did not die. She survived a murder attempt disguised as a plane crash. And the man behind it is someone I once trusted more than anyone. Scene 2, the name that shook the room. Richard pulled a stack of papers from a black leather folder. Jerome Callister, CFO of Kane Enterprises and co-chair of the Kane Foundation, was the architect of this conspiracy. He laundered over $300 million through dummy aid organizations. When Elena uncovered the fraud, he silenced her. The reporters erupted in shouting. How did she survive? Was the crash staged? Is she testifying? Why now? Elena stepped forward, voice shaky but resolute. I stayed quiet for 5 years. Not because I was afraid for myself, but because I was afraid for my husband. They told me if I ever resurfaced, Richard would be next. She lifted the wedding necklace, still stained from time and dust, and held it up for the cameras. But love doesn't die in silence. And the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Scene 3, the enemy reacts. Jerome Callister watched the press conference from a private yacht anchored off the coast of the Hamptons. His glass of champagne slipped from his hand and shattered on the deck. She's alive, he muttered, stunned. His assistant rushed in. Should we call legal? No. Call Alvarez. Tell him to initiate Protocol 0. But sir, that's... Do it. Back in New York, Richard received a tip from Lena Morales, his ex-CIA security chief. We have eyes on Jerome. He's mobilizing assets. Offshore accounts are being emptied. He's preparing to flee. Then we stop him. Publicly. Scene 4, the chase begins. That night, Richard, Elena, Hope, Lena, and Daniel went into lockdown at a secure Kane Technologies safe house. Meanwhile, Jerome's team moved fast, bribing officials, erasing footprints, and silencing witnesses. One by one, evidence started disappearing. Flash drives were wiped. Shelter volunteers threatened. The church clinic mysteriously burned down. Elena sobbed watching the footage. They're destroying everything. Richard held her hand. Not everything. They can't erase what's in your mind. Or what's in Hope's memory. Then Lena's phone buzzed. He's headed for the airport. Private hangar. Wheels up in 3 hours. Scene 5, the airport showdown. The wind howled across the tarmac. Lights glared down on the sleek black jet waiting to take off. Jerome stepped out of his armored SUV, flanked by 3 bodyguards. His expression was pure venom. Then he stopped. Richard Kane stood in front of the jet stairs. Alone. It's over, Jerome. Jerome smirked. You always were dramatic. Get out of the way. I'm not here to fight you, Richard said. I'm here to offer you a choice. He pulled out a folder. This is everything Elena recovered. Copies. Cloud backups. Testimony. Ready to go live. So. Jerome growled. So either you turn yourself in and we handle this quietly, or in 90 seconds, the entire file hits every major media outlet worldwide. With your name in bold. Jerome paused. Thought. Laughed. You won't do it. Richard raised his phone. Tapped send. Scene 6, the fall goes viral. At that exact moment, every screen in the airport, and across every major network, flickered. A video began. Elena Kane, bruised but proud, speaking directly to the camera. Names. Dates. Transactions. Proof. People across the country watched in stunned silence. In hospitals. Bars. Government buildings. Stock markets froze. And Jerome Callister? He dropped to his knees as federal agents stepped out from the shadows. Jerome Callister, one agent barked. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. Cameras flashed. Helicopters hovered. The fall of an empire had just begun. Scene 7, Hope's voice. Back home, Hope sat beside Elena, watching it all unfold on television. Does this mean it's over? She asked. Elena smiled, brushing her hair. It means it's beginning. Later, at a smaller press event, Richard asked Hope if she wanted to say something. The shy girl stepped up to the mic. I'm not important. I'm just a kid. But I believed her. When she gave me that picture, and said to find Mr. Kane, I listened. She paused. And sometimes, that's all the world needs. Someone to listen. Someone to believe. The crowd clapped. Elena wept. Richard stood behind her, pride in his eyes. Scene 8, the new mission. A week later, Richard announced the creation of the Elena Initiative, a global justice program focused on protecting whistleblowers, funding shelter clinics, and rescuing children from systemic neglect. This foundation is built not on wealth, but on truth, Richard said. He retired as CEO of Kane Industries and made Elena the new director of humanitarian outreach. Daniel took over legal reform. Hope was officially adopted into the Kane family. End of Act 3. Act 4 will explore Elena's full recovery, the trial of Jerome Callister, deeper corruption revealed in the government, and a shocking twist involving Hope's hidden past.